Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up a stack of, well, really fascinating new medical research excerpts.
Yeah, and this research is focused entirely on NAD plus and the future of ovarian longevity.
Exactly. And the mission of this deep dive is to understand how one single tiny molecule might, completely rewrite the rules of female fertility.
It really has the potential to do that.
Because when you look at the human body, there is this massive, glaring biological mismatch.
Right, a total paradox.
I mean, modern medicine has done a phenomenal job of keeping us healthy for longer. Our hearts, our lungs, our brains, they are engineered to stay strong and active well into our 60s, 70s, and beyond.
Yet the ovaries operate on an entirely different, much older timeline.
Yeah.
While the rest of a woman's body might be at its absolute physical peak, the ovaries begin to show significant signs of cellular aging and slowing down in her mid-30s.
Which is wild.
Right. That is a full 20 years earlier than the decline we see in most other major organ systems.
A 20-year gap. And that ancient biological timeline fundamentally clashes with the modern reality of your life.
No, absolutely.
You might want to finish graduate school, build a stable career, or just take the time to find the right partner before having kids.
Yeah, society has changed, but biology hasn't.
Exactly. But the ovaries were running on this relentless hidden clock that simply does not care about modern societal timelines.
No, it doesn't.
Think about it like having a top-of-the-line, incredibly expensive smartphone.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Every app runs perfectly, the screen is flawless, and the processor is just blazing fast. But for some completely mysterious reason, the battery for the camera specifically just dies by noon.
Just the camera?
Right. The rest of the phone works totally fine. You can browse the web, make calls, but the camera has just completely shut down way before the rest of the device even breaks a sweat.
And, the frustration of that perfectly illustrates the central paradox we are exploring today. Historically, medical science has viewed this premature ovarian decline as an unstoppable ticking clock.
Like it was just inevitable.
Exactly. It was treated as a fixed countdown that you simply couldn't alter. But the data we are unpacking today introduces a massive paradigm shift.
A really massive one.
Yeah, cellular biologists are starting to realize that this early decline might not be a fixed clock at all. It looks much more like, a maintenance and battery problem.
And every battery has a power switch. According to the research, that switch is a molecule called NAD+.
Nicotinamide, adenine, dinucleotide?
Right. If we stop looking at ovarian aging as an unstoppable countdown and start treating it as a fixable power failure, it changes the entire landscape of reproductive medicine.
It really does.
So since we've established that the ovaries have a premature power failure, we need to look at exactly what happens inside the cell when the lights start to dim.
Yeah, the mechanics of it.
Right. What are the actual mechanics of ovarian aging?
Well, the process basically comes down to three major systemic failures. First, you have severe mitochondrial dysfunction. The mitochondria are the power plants of the cells, and they just stop functioning correctly.
Just break down.
Right. Second, because those power plants are malfunctioning, they start throwing off harmful molecules known as free radicals. Which essentially rust the cell from the inside out.
Yeah.
And third, the physical supply of viable eggs drops dramatically.
So everything is failing at once.
Exactly. And the primary culprit tying all of these catastrophic failures together is a massive localized drop in NAD+ levels.
Because NAD+ is literally the fuel for the cell's power switch.
It is.
It's the fundamental molecule that helps cells turn nutrients into usable energy, and it also powers the machinery that repairs cellular damage.
And to give that some context, egg cells require an almost incomprehensible amount of energy to mature properly.
Like more than normal cells.
Oh, way more. An egg has to undergo a highly complex division process where it physically pulls its own chromosomes apart. Yeah, that mechanical action requires massive amounts of ATP, the energy currency of the cell. And that relies entirely on NAD+.
So they are burning through it.
Absolutely. When NAD+ levels crash, the machinery that keeps those egg cells healthy just grinds to a halt. The egg simply cannot keep up with its own massive energy demands.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, this doesn't just hurt the egg itself, it negatively affects the surrounding ovary cells by disabling crucial repair enzymes called sirtuins.
Sirtuins, right.
Think of sirtuins as the cell's microscopic paramedics. They rush around fixing DNA damage, but they strictly require NAD+ as their fuel
So
source.
no NAD+, no pyramid.
Exactly. They are grounded.
Okay, let's unpack this. Wait, I use an ellipsis in my notes here. Let me just say, okay, let's unpack this because this is where my brain gets a little stuck.
Sure.
If the entire human body uses NAD+ for energy, I mean, my heart beats 100,000 times a day. My brain is constantly firing neurons. Why do the ovaries specifically crash 2 decades early?
That is the big question.
Is it simply because egg cells are the ultimate energy hogs of the human body and they're just burning through the supply?
What's fascinating here is that the localized supply and demand crisis is exactly what makes the ovary unique.
Okay.
The authors of these studies suggest this localized deficiency happens because the body uses the NAD+ up too fast during those intense maturation cycles.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it doesn't use it well, or it can't recycle it efficiently, or, the local ovarian environment simply loses the ability to manufacture enough of it to meet those massive sudden spikes in energy demand.
So it's an infrastructure problem.
Precisely. The power grid in the ovary simply isn't robust enough to handle the surges required for reproduction as a woman ages.
Well, if the ovaries are uniquely vulnerable to this energy depletion, we have to ask the next logical question.
Yeah.
Is the sheer passage of time the only thing draining this battery?
The clinical data provides a resounding no.
It's not just time.
No. The passage of time is a major factor, obviously, but it is far from the only one. Illness, metabolic stress, and even the natural ovulation cycle itself can cause sudden, catastrophic NAD+ crashes.
The idea that external factors and underlying conditions are constantly, actively draining the battery, I mean, that completely reframes the conversation.
And it really broadens it.
The reading mentioned PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, as a major drain on this system. But how much of a power drop are we actually talking about here?
It's a staggering drop. PCOS profoundly impacts the granulosa cells.
And those are the support cells, right?
Right, the crucial support cells that surround and nourish the developing eggs. The data shows that healthy women have about 0.16 picomoles of NAD+ per 1,000 granulosa cells.
0.16.
But women dealing with PCOS, their levels plummet to just 0.10 picomoles per 1,000 cells.
Wait, really? That is almost a 40% shortage.
It is massive.
That's not a slight dip. That is a systemic brownout inside the ovary.
And that specific shortage makes it vastly harder for the follicles. Those are the fluid-filled sacs holding the eggs to mature properly. The energy just isn't there to support the process.
So the battery is just drained before it even starts?
Yeah. But it's not just underlying conditions like PCOS. External medical treatments, specifically chemotherapy, create an even more violent drain on the battery.
Right. The research highlighted cancer drugs, specifically cyclophosphamide.
Yes.
And it noted that this drug drains NAD+ stores incredibly fast. But why? Where is all that energy going?
It goes toward crisis management. Chemotherapy induces massive cellular damage, and the body goes into absolute overdrive trying to repair it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Specifically, the body desperately needs massive amounts of NAD+ to activate an enzyme called SIRT2.
SIRT2.
Right. SIRT2 is vital because its job is to prevent a highly destructive inflammatory type of cell death known as pyroptosis.
Pyroptosis, that sounds intense.
It is. It isn't a neat, orderly cell death. It's a messy, explosive cell death that releases inflammatory cytokines and damages all the healthy neighboring tissue.
Oh, wow. So it's spreading the damage.
Exactly. When scientists observed mice exposed to this chemo drug, they saw the ovarian cells burning through their entire NAD+ reserve, just trying to activate SRT2, contain the fire, and prevent this explosive cell death.
They are essentially draining their entire power grid just to keep the containment shields up.
That's exactly what they are doing.
So you have chronic conditions like PCOS, you have intense medical treatments like chemo, but then the authors pointed out a massive drain on the battery that happens entirely naturally every single month.
Right.
The 24-hour window of ovulation.
The strict chemical timeline of a released egg is incredibly unforgiving.
After an egg is released during ovulation, if it remains unfertilized, it only has a viable window of about 12 to 24 hours.
Yes, very short.
And the research shows that once that highly specific window closes, the NAD+ levels inside the egg just absolutely plummets.
The crash is immediate. And without NAD+ to fuel the repair mechanisms, the egg experiences massive, irreversible damage from free radicals.
It just rusts.
It essentially degrades from the inside out within hours.
Reading the mechanics of that, I couldn't help but picture an unfertilized egg as this tiny, highly complex space capsule.
I love that visual.
Right. It gets launched into the void,
Yeah.
and it only has exactly 24 hours of life support.
Yep.
If it doesn't complete its mission and get fertilized in that exact window, the NAD plus power grid shuts down. The life support fails, the deflector shields drop,
Yeah.
and the free radicals just tear the ship apart.
That visual perfectly captures the fragility of the biological event. And, connecting this back to you, the listener, it radically broadens how we should view fertility.
It really does.
We have been so deeply conditioned to think about a woman's fertility purely as a number, her chronological age.
The ticking clock.
Right. But this underlying cellular research proves it is infinitely more complex. Exposure to external toxins, underlying metabolic conditions, and these incredibly strict chemical timelines all have a profound, measurable impact on the reproductive system's power supply.
So if an egg survival depends entirely on this fragile energy grid, and the battery is constantly being drained by time, illness, and the cycle itself, how does the ovary actually fight back?
Good question.
How does it manufacture this vital fuel to keep the lights on?
The ovary actually operates an internal factory with 3 very distinct pathways to make or recycle NAD+.
Okay, the reading got a little heavy on the alphabet soup here, so let's walk through this carefully.
Let's do it.
The first one is called the salvage pathway. This is essentially the main recycling system, right?
Correct.
It takes used-up material, specifically nicotinamide, and quickly turns it back into fresh NAD+. And the text points out that this is the ovary's absolute favorite method for keeping things in balance.
It's the go-to.
It even uses specialized transport proteins, like there's one called SLC12A8. Yes. And its sole job is to act like a vacuum, pulling a building block called NMN directly from the bloodstream into the cell just to keep the recycling factory running at top speed.
The reliance on the salvage pathway makes biological sense because it's highly efficient.
Right.
But the body loves redundancy, so you have a backup route known as the price handler pathway.
The backup.
Right. This one uses a totally different starting ingredient called nicotinic acid, along with a specific enzyme called NAPRT to synthesize NAD+. It is highly functional, but it's not the primary route for the ovary.
Okay. And finally, there is the de novo pathway. De novo meaning from scratch.
Yes.
This is the build it from scratch route. It uses a basic amino acid called tryptophan to create NAD+ from the ground up.
Yep, completely from raw materials.
But I have to admit, I got a little confused here. If the recycling system is so fast and efficient, why does the cell even bother keeping this complicated build-from-scratch pathway around?
It's evolutionary insurance. If the recycling materials run out, the cell needs a way to build power from raw nutrients. However, the de novo pathway is notoriously slow and highly complicated.
Lots of steps.
Exactly. The research notes that while the body is usually pretty resilient, this specific from-scratch pathway gets stuck very easily in the ovary.
Oh, it gets jammed.
Yes. Specifically, if a key enzyme in the middle of the assembly line, called QPRT, gets jammed up, the whole manufacturing process stalls, and when that stalls, ovarian aging rapidly accelerates.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Looking at these 3 options, it makes total sense why the ovary prefers the salvage pathway.
It really does.
So the de novo pathway is basically like trying to forge a car engine from raw iron ore in your backyard.
Ah, yes.
It takes forever, the assembly line gets jammed up, and so much can go wrong. But the salvage pathway, that's just taking a used car down to the local mechanic for a quick tune-up.
Much easier.
You swap a few parts, and it's back on the road. No wonder the ovary prefers to recycle and relies heavily on those specialized proteins to just vacuum up spare parts.
And, the efficiency of that recycling tune-up is entirely dependent on one ultimate biological multitasker.
Okay, who's the multitasker?
It's an enzyme called NMPT. And NAMPT is fascinating because it acts like a cellular double agent.
Wait, how does an enzyme act like a double agent?
It performs 2 entirely different critical jobs depending on its physical location.
Interesting.
Inside the cell, NAMPT is the lead mechanic of the recycling factory we just talked about. It handles the absolute slowest, most crucial step of turning used nicotinamide back into fresh NAD+.
Okay, so it's a mechanic inside.
Right. But when NAMPT gets secreted outside the cell, into the surrounding environment, it actually changes its identity. It transforms into a hormone called visfatin.
Visfot.
Yes.
And the data shows that in this hormonal form, outside the cell, it acts a lot like insulin, floating in the fluid that surrounds and bathes the developing eggs.
Exactly. And the clinical observations of visfatin in human patients are striking.
What do they see?
Women who naturally have higher levels of this fatin in that surrounding fluid tend to produce significantly more eggs during IVF treatments.
Wow. Think about the mechanics of that for a second. That completely shatters how we usually view the ovary itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it absolutely
Yeah.
does. The traditional view is that the ovary is just this passive organ, right? Just a storage container sitting around waiting for hormonal instructions from the brain or the pituitary gland.
Just following orders.
Right. But the production of this fatin proves the ovary is an active, dynamic organ. By secreting its own hormones into the local environment, the ovary is actively signaling, managing, and controlling its own metabolic success.
That is incredible.
It's behaving very much like fat tissue does, managing its own local ecosystem.
Well, if the ovary's internal recycling system is struggling and the factory assembly line is slowing down, human nature, and especially modern wellness culture, tells us the solution is incredibly simple.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Right. Just flood the system. If the grid needs more NAD+, let's just take a massive handful of NAD+ boosting supplements, overwhelm the problem, and power up the grid.
The research throws a massive curveball right at that assumption, because when it comes to the delicate chemistry of the reproductive system, more is definitely not better.
The Goldilocks rule.
Exactly. The authors call this the Goldilocks rule.
The animal experiments detailed in the reading really highlight this. Scientists tested NMN, which again is that crucial building block the cell vacuums up to recycle into NAD+.
Yes.
They gave one group of mice a lower moderate dose of 0.5 grams per liter in their water. Then they tested against a much higher megadose of 2 grams per liter.
And the results completely defied the whole more is better mindset that dominates the supplement industry.
Completely.
The lower dose of 0.5 grams dramatically improved egg quality, boosted fertility, and restored cellular function. But the massive 2-gram dose actually failed to produce those same restorative benefits.
I have to push back on the wellness industry here.
Oh, please do.
Because we are so conditioned by the supplement industry to think, well, if a little is good, a massive dose is obviously better.
Right.
It is wild that a massive dose of 2 grams literally failed to fix the core biological issues. But the smaller targeted dose achieved perfect harmony.
Harmony is the precise word for what was happening biologically.
Yeah.
The lower dose wasn't just blindly stuffing the cells with energy. The correct targeted dose perfectly fixed the ratio between two vital hormones that control the entire menstrual cycle.
FSH and LH.
Exactly. Follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone.
So boosting NAD+ at the correct Goldilocks dosage doesn't just charge the local battery, it actually resets the entire systemic hormonal operating system that dictates reproduction.
That is the promise of the research.
Yeah.
However, the jump from an animal model in a controlled lab to a human clinical application is a massive leap. And it's filled with critical unknowns.
Human trials are a whole different ballgame.
Yes. Animal studies show that precursor supplements like NMN and NR can make old mouse eggs young again, but human research is just barely beginning.
The literature lists several major hurdles that scientists are actively wrestling with. First off, does the underlying cause dictate the specific treatment?
Right.
Like, does a younger woman dealing with the metabolic drain of PCOS need a totally different supplement protocol or a different precursor molecule than an older woman who is simply dealing with natural age-related decline?
The honest answer from the scientific community is that we just don't know yet.
Wow.
Furthermore, researchers don't fully understand the delivery mechanism in humans. How do these ingested supplements survive the digestive tract and actually penetrate the human egg cell in high enough concentrations?
And as we get older, that delivery system might age too, right?
Exactly. Does the cellular machinery required to absorb these supplements degrade as a woman ages? That could potentially render the treatment useless just when she needs it most.
And then there's the biggest hurdle of all in reproductive medicine safety.
Always.
What happens if a human takes these metabolic supplements constantly for years at a time? Could artificially manipulating the cellular energy grid over a long period accidentally disrupt the incredibly delicate chemical balance required for early embryo development?
This raises an important question, right? It serves as the ultimate caution tape.
Yeah.
We have discovered a powerful biological lever that can alter the aging process of an organ. But pulling that lever too hard or in the wrong sequence could have developmental side effects for a resulting embryo that we don't yet have the data to understand.
Synthesizing everything we've covered today from the data, it is clear we are witnessing a massive paradigm shift in reproductive medicine.
Absolutely.
We are officially moving away from this depressing, fatalistic idea that female fertility is just a fixed biological resource that simply runs out of sand.
The scientific community is actively framing female fertility as a dynamic metabolic process.
Which is huge.
It is. And like many metabolic processes in the human body, it is something we can support, we can actively maintain through targeted intervention, and potentially we can even restore.
So what does this all mean? If we think about what this means for you, the listener, it completely rewrites how you should think about your own fertility timeline.
Yes, it does.
If this metabolic rejuvenation becomes a reality, it will directly solve that massive stressful gap we talked about at the very beginning.
Right, the 20-year gap.
The gap between when a woman's body is biologically demanding to reproduce and when her actual life finishing school, building a career, finding a partner, is fully ready for that step.
Yeah. The hidden clock inside the ovary is no longer just ticking down to zero. The science suggests it is actively being reset.
It represents a remarkable leap forward in giving women true biological agency over their own life timelines.
It really is a game changer.
It is. And it leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over based on where this science is heading.
Okay, let's hear it.
If researchers eventually master the NAD+ pathways to perfectly pause and safely restore ovarian aging for fertility, does that mean the systemic onset of menopause itself could one day become an entirely optional phase of human life?
Oh, wow.
Right. And if so, how would completely removing that ancient biological clock reshape society as we know it?
Okay.
Imagine a world where that top-of-the-line smartphone battery just never dies.
That is something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.